Somewhere in a locked General Motors archive, there is a folder that Chevrolet never wanted the public to see. Inside it are engineering memos, canceled contracts, and photographs of a car that almost never existed. That car is the 1959 Chevrolet Impala, and for over 60 years, the company that built it has quietly kept 20 secrets buried under chrome and steel. Some of these secrets could have destroyed the Impala's reputation before it ever left the factory. Others are so strange that even the engineers who lived through them could barely explain what happened. Today, we are opening that folder. We are going to walk through every one of these 20 hidden truths, counting down from the strangest to the most shocking. And I promise you, by the time we reach number 1, you will never look at this car the same way again. If you think you know the 1959 Impala, stay until the end, because the biggest secret on this list is the one Chevrolet buried the deepest, and it is the reason this car almost never got a second year. Let's get into it. Number 20. The car's most famous feature was never supposed to look the way it does. When Chevrolet's design team first sketched the rear end of the 1959 Impala, the tail fins were modest, restrained, almost apologetic compared to what eventually reached showrooms. Then, according to insiders who worked in the studio that year, a senior design executive walked in, looked at the clay models, and said the car looked scared of its own shape. He grabbed a grease pencil and redrew the fins himself, stretching them outward until they nearly doubled in width. Engineers were furious. The change forced a redesign of the trunk, the rear quarter panels, and the taillight housings, adding months to the schedule and blowing through the budget. But the executive had just come from an air show where he watched a fighter jet slice through the sky, and he wanted the Impala to look like it had broken the sound barrier. Chevrolet never publicly admitted how close this iconic look came to being cut in half. Number 19. The most recognizable taillights Chevrolet ever built were never actually given a name by the company. Look at the back of a 1959 Impala, and you will see those narrow, almond-shaped lenses wrapped in thick chrome that car lovers everywhere call the cat eye taillights. Here's the part Chevrolet never advertised. That nickname did not come from their marketing department. It came from customers, from mechanics, from magazine writers who needed a quick way to describe something so strange-looking that it demanded its own language. Officially, in every brochure Chevrolet printed that year, those taillights had no name at all. And there is something even stranger buried in this story. For exactly 1 year, the Impala, the Bel Air, and the entry-level Biscayne all wore the exact same rear lighting design. That never happened before, and it never happened again. The following year, Chevrolet quietly reversed the decision, and the cat-eye look vanished forever, making it one of the rarest one-year design experiments in American car history. Number 18. The name Impala almost never made it onto this car at all. It sounds obvious now, a fast, graceful African antelope lending its name to a fast, graceful automobile. But behind the scenes, Chevrolet's legal department was sweating bullets. A small boat manufacturer had already filed paperwork using the Impala name for a line of motorboats. For 8 tense months, lawyers negotiated a settlement just to secure the rights before production began. And here is what Chevrolet never told the public. They had a backup name ready in case those negotiations collapsed. Internal paperwork, later uncovered by a collector who purchased an archive of old General Motors documents, revealed the alternate name under serious consideration. It was nowhere near as iconic, and if the lawyers had failed, you would be watching a video today about a completely different sounding car that most people would have forgotten decades ago. Number 17. The convertible version of this car was hiding an entirely different skeleton underneath its skin. When engineers simply removed the roof from the hardtop body to create the convertible, the whole structure twisted like a wet noodle over rough pavement during testing. Doors jammed shut. Panels flexed in ways that terrified the test drivers. The fix required building a completely separate reinforced frame just for the convertible, adding well over 100 pounds of hidden steel and shifting the entire front suspension geometry by nearly an inch. Chevrolet never publicized this because they did not want customers realizing that a huge portion of the convertible's higher price tag was paying for structural reinforcement they would never consciously notice. To this day, restorers who try to swap a convertible body onto a hardtop frame discover the hard way just how little these twins actually share underneath. Number 16. A 1959 Impala once starred in a piece of Soviet propaganda, and it backfired spectacularly. During the Cold War, Soviet filmmakers obtained an Impala through diplomatic channels and used it in a film meant to portray American consumer culture as shallow and morally empty. The director filmed scenes of reckless driving and wasteful spending around the car, hoping to disgust Soviet audiences. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. Soviet citizens fell in love with it. Letters poured into the State Film Bureau asking where they could get a car just like it. Within weeks, the film was quietly pulled from circulation. Chevrolet never knew that their car had just delivered better propaganda for the American dream than any advertisement they could have paid for. And to this day, historians have never traced what became of that actual vehicle. Number 15. Chevrolet secretly sold a race-ready engine that never appeared on any official paperwork. Under pressure from an industry agreement discouraging manufacturers from advertising high-horsepower street engines, Chevrolet publicly played by the rules while quietly running a workaround through dealerships. A powerful version of their small-block engine, complete with dual carburetors and an aggressive camshaft, was shipped to certain dealers in plain unmarked boxes. If a customer knew exactly who to ask and exactly what to request, that engine could be sitting under the hood before the car ever left the lot, yet it would never show up on the factory build sheet. It was one of the worst kept secrets in the auto industry at the time, and General Motors never once officially confirmed it existed, even though surviving cars today prove it absolutely did. Number 14. The dashboard sitting in front of every 1959 Impala driver went through a design nightmare that took 4 complete attempts to survive. The first version was rejected as too boring. The second version wrapped instruments dramatically from door to door, but test drivers found themselves stretching uncomfortably just to reach the radio, and the speedometer sat too low to glance at safely. The third version was killed in a single meeting when the styling chief looked at it once and said it looked like it had been designed by a frightened committee. Only the fourth attempt, raising the main instrument cluster to true eye level, finally earned approval, and it took less than 10 minutes to get the green light. Nobody buying this car in 1959 ever knew how many failed dashboards came before the one they were resting their hands on. And before we go further, if this kind of hidden automotive history keeps you hooked the way it's hooking you right now, make sure you are subscribed, because what is coming in the next few minutes gets even stranger. And by the halfway point of this video, you are going to hear a secret that Chevrolet genuinely tried to erase from its own records. Number 13. Tens of thousands of buyers deliberately ordered their brand new Impala with something missing that almost nobody skipped in 1959. A radio. Chevrolet's own production records show that around 42,000 buyers specifically asked for no radio at all. Fleet buyers and rental agencies wanted to cut costs, sure, but a surprising number of private owners had their own reasons. Some complained the factory speaker faced the windshield instead of the passengers, killing the sound quality. Others simply hated how the radio interrupted the sweeping symmetry of that gorgeous dashboard. A small but real group deleted it purely to install aftermarket sound systems, a niche industry just beginning to boom. Even today, surviving radio delete Impalas have this odd blank rectangle sitting in the dash, a strange little void in an otherwise flawless design. Number 12. This single car outsold entire competing car companies combined in one single year. When the final production numbers came in for 1959, the Impala alone had moved close to 500,000 units. That is not 500,000 cars across Chevrolet's whole lineup. That is one single model. Ford's entire premium lineup did not come close. Several of Chrysler's full lineups combined barely matched what the Impala did on its own. The number was so enormous that Chevrolet's own internal planning department initially assumed there had been a clerical error in the reports. There was no error. This one car reshaped how General Motors approached the entire full-size market for the next decade, and the sales record it set would stand untouched for 5 full years before finally being broken by a later Impala generation. Number 11. Chevrolet engineered the sound of a trunk lid closing as if it were tuning a musical instrument. This sounds almost too strange to be true, but it is thoroughly documented. Engineers discovered that buyers unconsciously associated certain sounds with quality. A sharp metallic clang made a car feel cheap and flimsy. A deep, heavy thud made it feel expensive and solid, so Chevrolet's team adjusted the thickness of the trunk's sheet metal and added internal reinforcing ribs, not to make it stronger, but purely to tune the exact resonant frequency of the sound it made when it shut. This kind of acoustic engineering is standard today in luxury vehicles worth 6 figures. In 1959, doing this on a mass-market family car was almost unheard of, and it reveals just how obsessively Chevrolet was chasing an emotional experience most buyers never consciously noticed. Now, here is where things take a turn, because everything you have heard so far is strange, sure, but what is coming next is the part of this story Chevrolet genuinely did not want getting out. The part that almost erased this car from history altogether. So if you have made it this far, do not go anywhere, because the next few facts completely change how you see this legendary machine. Number 10. A 1959 Impala was involved in what many historians consider the very first police pursuit ever captured on film and broadcast to the public. A television news crew happened to be riding along with a patrol officer driving a fleet-ordered Impala sedan when a call came in about a stolen vehicle. The chase that followed through city streets was filmed from the back seat and aired on the evening news, making it one of the earliest documented moments where the public watched a real police chase unfold on their television sets. The Impala handled the pursuit with a stability nobody expected from a family sedan, cornering hard at speeds that were not supposed to be comfortable for an ordinary car. Local dealers reported a noticeable spike in interest the very week the footage aired, an advertisement Chevrolet never had to pay a single dollar for. Number 9. The roof of this car was built stronger than any government safety standard required. Decades before those standards even existed, in 1959, there were zero federal regulations governing how much crushing force a car roof needed to withstand in a rollover. Chevrolet had no legal obligation whatsoever to reinforce this car's roof beyond basic structural needs, yet internal engineering documents show the roof was designed to hold nearly 1.5 times the entire weight of the vehicle without collapsing, an enormous safety margin nobody was required to meet. The reason traces back to one structural engineer who had personally witnessed a horrific rollover involving a competitor's car whose roof caved in instantly. On his own initiative, without official approval from management, he quietly built that extra strength into the design. Nobody caught it before production, nobody removed it, and customers drove around for over a decade with a roof built to a safety standard that would not become law for another 15 years. Number 8. Chevrolet built an entire, fully functional version of this car using stainless steel instead of ordinary sheet metal, partnering with a steel supplier looking to prove their material could handle complex curved car bodies. Chevrolet produced a single complete Impala where the hood, the fins, the doors, the roof, and the trunk lid were all stamped from solid stainless steel. It required completely custom tooling because stainless steel behaves nothing like standard body steel under a press, and several curved panels needed multiple failed attempts before engineers got them right. This car needed no paint, no primer, and no rust protection whatsoever. Nearly 7 decades later, that exact vehicle still exists in remarkably preserved condition, its panels showing only a natural silvery patina, while thousands of ordinary Impalas from the same year have long since rusted into scrap. Number 7. This car was officially announced as the pace car for a major race, and then it never actually paced anything. Chevrolet finalized a deal, built a specially prepared convertible, printed promotional materials, and launched an advertising campaign around the honor. Then, just weeks before the event, a rival manufacturer threatened to pull their factory-sponsored race entries entirely if a Chevrolet wore the official pace car colors. Event organizers caved under the pressure and quietly swapped in a different manufacturer's car at the last possible moment. Chevrolet's advertisements had already gone to print, too far along to cancel, so the ads ran anyway, promoting a role this car never actually fulfilled on race day. That specially built convertible still exists today in a private collection, still wearing pace car graphics for a race it never attended. A car prepared for a spotlight, it was denied at the final hour. Number 6. The exact length of this car's wheelbase was chosen partly because of a theory borrowed from music. This sounds impossible until you read the actual memo. A body engineer working on the project argued that the ratio between the wheelbase, the overall length, and the front and rear overhangs should follow a mathematical proportion the human eye naturally reads as beautiful, a concept he described using language borrowed straight from musical harmony theory. Whether or not the math holds up under rigorous scrutiny, the resulting proportions produced a car that nearly every designer and historian who has studied it since agrees looks exceptionally balanced, especially considering how extreme and dramatic those fins were pulling the design in every other direction. Number 5. The car most people picture when they think of this generation of Impala was actually the least popular version Chevrolet sold. Pop culture, music videos, and low-rider culture have built an almost mythical reputation around the convertible, so strong that most people assume it dominated sales. The real production numbers tell a completely different story. The two-door hardtop alone outsold the convertible by a ratio of nearly 3-to-1, with the convertible making up barely 15% of total production. The convertible's massive cultural presence comes almost entirely from how visually dramatic it looks with the top down, and its relative rarity has since driven collector prices sky high, reinforcing a myth that it was always the star of the lineup, while the far more common hardtop quietly faded into the background of history. Number 4. One single owner drove one of these cars over 1 million documented miles. A Florida citrus farmer bought his Impala sedan brand new and kept it running for decades, logging every fuel stop, every repair, and every service interval by hand in obsessive detail. When the odometer finally rolled past the 1 million mile mark, he photographed the instrument cluster as proof, and a regional automotive historical society later reviewed his handwritten records and confirmed the claim as credible. Over its working life, that car went through 3 engine replacements, 4 transmissions, and nearly 2,000 individual repairs, all while wearing its original, never repainted body. The owner credited the car's survival not to extraordinary engineering, but to simply fixing every small problem the moment it appeared instead of letting anything slide. Now, if you thought that was the wildest thing on this list, wait until you hear what is holding this entire car together right now, because it is hiding in plain sight and almost nobody who owns one realizes it. Number 3. Those massive dramatic tail fins everyone assumes are purely decorative are actually doing real structural work. Engineers discovered almost by accident that the horizontal geometry of those extended fins acted like a natural stiffening rib for the rear body section, quietly improving the car's resistance to twisting. Removing the fins in structural analysis actually reduced the rear body's rigidity by a measurable amount. Nobody set out to design a structural fin, but once engineers realized what was happening, they deliberately reinforced the sheet metal in that area to lean into the accidental benefit. This is exactly why some surviving cars with damaged or poorly repaired fins develop subtle misalignment in their rear door gaps, because the very feature everyone assumed was just for show has been quietly holding the back half of the car together the entire time. Number 2. The single most iconic image of this car in pop culture only exists because of a dead car battery. By the early 90s, this generation of Impala already had strong ties to low-rider culture, but everything changed during the filming of a hugely influential West Coast music video. The production had arranged for a different, later model year Impala to be the star of the shoot, widely considered the ultimate low-rider platform. On the morning of filming, that car simply refused to start. In a scramble, a crew member called a contact who happened to own a fully hydraulic 1959 Impala in black, and that car arrived on set within hours as a last-minute replacement. What was supposed to be a backup ended up becoming one of the most visually iconic moments in music video history, with this car's dramatic length and unmistakable silhouette burning itself into global pop culture in a way no advertising budget could have ever purchased. And now, the biggest secret of them all? The one fact that Chevrolet genuinely never wanted told, because it means this legendary car came within a single bad sales season of being erased from history entirely. Number 1. Chevrolet seriously considered killing this car after just one single year on the market. It sounds impossible today, given how deeply this car is woven into American automotive legend. But the paperwork is real. When it first launched as a top trim package rather than its own separate model, sales were solid but not spectacular, and quality complaints generated a wave of unexpectedly high warranty claims. By late that same year, while planning was already underway for the next model year, a faction inside General Motors management was pushing hard to fold this car back into a lower trim package instead of continuing it as its own distinct, standalone nameplate. The cost of maintaining unique trim, unique lighting, and unique interior detailing was significant, and if the numbers had not justified it, the accounting argument to simplify and cut costs was completely real and completely serious. What saved this car from disappearing forever was the staggering, almost unbelievable success of the very model we have spent this entire video discussing. Those nearly 500,000 sales in a single year made every argument for cancellation vanish overnight. The car that came terrifyingly close to being a forgotten one-year experiment instead went on to become the best-selling nameplate of the entire following decade. So there it is. 20 secrets Chevrolet buried for over 6 decades. Secrets about accidental structural genius, engineered sounds, hidden engines, dead batteries that changed pop culture forever, and a cancellation that came within a single bad quarter of erasing this legendary car from existence completely. This was never just a car built by skilled designers doing their jobs perfectly. It was the product of stubborn individuals overruling entire committees, last-minute substitutions turning into legendary moments, and a set of dramatic fins that turned out to be quietly holding the whole thing together the entire time. If this deep dive kept you hooked until the very last second, that tells me you are exactly the kind of person who needs to be subscribed right now, because there are dozens more hidden stories like this one waiting to be uncovered. Drop a comment telling me which car you want exposed next. The one with the most likes becomes our very next video, and I will see you in the next one.